Purple eye in the canyon. That's where
It's not, and that's. Are we starting now?
Yeah, we kind of just free flow it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, we just let it rip.
Okay.
And then we'll just start it.
Yeah, cool.
I usually give like a little, kind of an intro, quasi intro.
All right, let's.
It's
do that.
actually.
I want to see your intro.
What's crazy? I actually don't have an intro at all. We usually just run it. I don't have an intro.
So I'm just curious, why did you decide on the gray socks? I mean, you got black and black.
I thought they were vibey.
Okay.
You know, I thought they had a certain vibe to it. I also thought there's a little gray in here.
There is a little gray in there. You're right. I'm wrong.
And the biggest reason is I grabbed one sock and I said, oh my gosh, I need to find one that matches. So I grabbed the other one.
I only have 4 kinds of socks in my entire drawer. Isn't that weird? That way I never have to go looking for pairs. So the short socks are all the same socks.
Okay.
The boot socks are all the same boot socks. I got dress socks that are all the same. And then I have just a few like that the kids get me for
different
Christmas.
Colors?
Yeah.
Okay,
but
you got to do
there's
different
3
colors.
basic colors and then just one kind of that you got to go find a pair.
So I just buy new ones like
Look
almost
at you.
every other week.
You spending that kind of money, huh?
Yeah, dude,
Wow.
it's pretty crazy.
Sock
the podcast
money.
has been good. I mean, that's why would you make money other
I
than
know.
to spend it on socks?
Other than socks.
You know, that's kind of what I've always been taught my whole life, really.
Was that your whole life spending socks, or did you get to be 31 and then suddenly started buying socks and then you cried at night saying, I'm finally a grown up?
No, well, my parents were big sock people.
Are they?
So,
Your dad seems like not a sock guy.
Yeah.
He seems like, like he really lived in the Don Johnson kind of no socks and slip on kind of loafers.
Don Johnson. Why am I thinking of the little urinal cake things? Whatever those called. Are those called Don something?
No, I'm sure. No.
You know what I'm talking about?
But Don Johnson was from Miami Vice, and that was an 80s thing.
Okay.
So, yeah. Wow. I feel old now.
Well, I don't know.
Do you want to hear other stories from the olden days?
Those ural cakes are pretty old, too.
They
They're
are.
probably from the 80s.
Yeah, and the older that you get, the more likely you are to touch them. Anyway. That's why you got to put your hand up there. And
so I figured we'd
brace
start
yourself.
with you just telling us a joke.
That was it.
I'm just kidding.
That was it.
Oh, all right.
I'm
So I
sure.
actually do have a pretty, I'm sure people tell you this all the time about the story of like how when they first saw you kind of thing. But ours, I think, is a little bit particularly unique because you end up knowing my family and some people that I know, and we're from the same quasi hometown. I'm from Decatur. You're from, I guess, Rome.
Well, I
Fort
was
Worth.
born in Blue Mound.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
an original Mounder by Saginaw.
Okay. Yeah, but general area.
Yeah, general area. Now we live here.
So like my freshman year of college, I guess my senior year of high school, I got a little bit into stand-up. There were some guys like Nick Swardson and stuff like that I started watching. And then my freshman year of college, we ended up going to, I was trying to remember it earlier, but I think it was Hyenas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was in
Fort Worth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Arlington?
Me and a bunch of my buddies, they're still all my friends. And I texted them when I found out I was doing a podcast with you too. Because my freshman year, we went to a comedy club, and I don't think you were headlining. I don't think. And this would have been, I don't know, close to 10 years ago or something.
And then I was headlining.
Okay, you were headlining. Okay. I didn't even know enough back then to even, you could have been first, and I would have been like, this is great. All right. Like, I didn't even know enough to, and you destroyed that room. And for years after that, and it was like right at the beginning of like social media really getting super popular. And none of us could ever quite like figure out who you were, and we could never find your stuff ever again. And it was probably over 10 years ago. And I had like moved to Florida, and I guess this would probably be 4 or 5 years ago. I saw one of your videos pop up on Facebook or something. And I was like, because I just remembered, it was a vivid memory of how funny you were and your face. You have a memorable face.
Yeah.
And you were kind of a wild man too. I remember you just eviscerating this one blonde girl up in the front that was kind of she was being a bit much.
Yeah,
and,
that's
and she ended up leaving, and we just thought it was the greatest thing we had ever seen in our lives. And so then I saw your video pop up, And I texted all my buddies that were there. And I was like, this is the freaking guy. Because we would always talk about it for years after that.
Oh, that's cool.
And then we found it there. And then it turns out, my dad and all that. And then this happened. And I was like, damn, what a freaking.
Yeah, it's it's been a journey. I really miss the clubs. I don't do the clubs much anymore. Now we do theaters.
Yeah.
And but those days and Hyenas is really I owe them everything. They really gave me a place to not only try it out. I didn't find stand up till I was 30.
Oh, how cool.
So yeah. So
how scary.
Well, it was and it wasn't. I wrote advertising out of college, and now I even admit with a fake degree. So I dropped out after my freshman year, and then I was out of college for 3 years. Got married, and then when my son came, that's when I decided I needed to grow up and finish an education.
Okay.
And so I worked full time, go to school full time for 3.5 years. And in my senior year, got served with papers for divorce. And I dropped out second time. But as I say in the show now, I learned my lesson and went down to Kinko's and I made me a degree.
That's
and
the way to do
it was before there was a good printer, so you had to cut and paste to make it look real. And
it took effort back then.
Yeah, it really did.
None of this digital crap now.
And even my buddy was like, I made this resume because I was going to school to write advertising, and I thought, that'll be the closest I'll ever get to show business. Honestly, that's what I thought. It'd be the closest I'd ever get. And so that was kind of the compromise. And sure enough, armed with a fake degree and a resume that was a bunch of bullshit. And a bunch of stuff that I'd never done. And even my buddy's like, you're going to get caught. What are you going to do when they catch you? I said, I'm going to tell them, hey, you were looking for a creative writer. How creative was that?
Yeah.
And then I wrote advertising, and I was absolutely miserable with my life. I was 27 and divorced and absolutely close to suicide, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
And as I tell people, especially now, the men are more likely to commit suicide after a breakup than women are, especially when there's children involved, and people don't realize how devastating that can be to not be able to see your kids, when you want to, and tuck them in and all that other stuff. And I tell people now that I've lived through all that, the best advice I can give to men is live, brother. If you really want to piss off the woman that broke your heart, live.
Well, what do you mean? Just do what you want to do?
No, live.
Okay.
Don't check out.
Quite
live.
literally.
Yeah.
Quite
literally live. Yeah. Maybe 28 years from now, you end up with a comedy career and 1 million followers on Facebook. And, and now your ex-wife has to hear all the time how charming and funny you were at a comedy club when they were in college.
Well, I didn't say you were charming.
No, I was not.
Yeah, so you were funny.
I used to be just brutally I took it like a bulldog up there, man.
Dude, it was life. I mean, just to go show you, we talked about it for 10 years.
Well,
we would always bring it up. Man, you remember that freaking guy, that cowboy guy?
Yeah.
Like, we would always bring it up.
Yeah. I finally dropped my name was Cowboy Bill on stage
Right.
for forever. And we dropped it, I guess, in 2016, a year after my year after my first national television special. And there's a lot of things that happened to change it. The name actually was not a made-up name. It's a name that my grandfather gave me at birth. His name was William Lee. My name is William Lee. He didn't want me to be called Little Bill like he was. He said, call him Cowboy Bill. And I was named after the old wrestler back in the 60s. And that's where the name came from. And then the special came out in 2015. My wife and I, we paid for the taping. We sold it to CMT, and then they said, we're going to use it, but we're going to have to bleep out the language in it. And at the time, I was really struggling on whether or not, because I don't cuss at home, really. And I don't cuss around the kids. And at the time, we also had a children's charity called Cowboys Who Care. So there was really two personas. There was the persona that I was really using on stage, and then there was who I was in real life. And I wanted those to get closer. And then I rededicated my life to Christ in 2016. And I really wanted just a rebirth of it all. So that's when we dropped Cowboy Bill and started going by my maiden name, William Lee Martin.
You were doing the cowboy thing before it was cool.
I was.
Yeah. So you dropped it just in time for it to like get super popular.
Well, you know,
everyone's in a cowboy
It's
hat.
funny. Yeah. I don't wear I actually take off my hat when I walk on stage now, because in the theaters, the lights hit on top. And you pointed out a while ago, you know, your facial expressions on stage are
huge.
And once I took off the hat, people could see the face even more. And some of the lame jokes I tell have to be sold with that mug right there.
Yeah. I feel you on that.
But it's the cut of the eyes and that kind of stuff. And
yeah, I try to tip the hat up.
do you?
But it's kind of a pain.
It is. And then what I found also is that once I took off the hat, you know, I'm a tall guy anyway, 6'2" or so. And with the cowboy hat, because of the way the lights hit, I also was bringing up my shoulders. Didn't know that till we took off the hat.
Wait, hold on. Explain that to me.
Because you almost, you know, you're trying to shield yourself from the light. So, you know, even though you tip it up, you still, not to be blinded, you're still, and I didn't know that until we took that off. And then suddenly my shoulders dropped back down and my neck got longer.
Wow.
And I actually point my face towards the light now.
Daggum. Talk about some subconscious body language stuff.
Yeah, it really was.
Have you gone down some, I'm sure you have to have gone down some rabbit holes on body language and
Yeah, well, you know, that's the great thing about stand-up is that you can tell who really you can, like in a club setting, you learn after 20 years, you can see who's not comfortable with you picking on them. And most of the people that, I never dive into the audience unless they provoke it, you know, so I don't, you know, now it's become so popular for comics to be, especially on the internet, own the heckler. You know, there's one guy, Christ, every time he puts out a deal, I own this heckler and this heckler and this heckler. And I put on one of his posts, I was like, if I got heckled this much, I would quit.
there's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're either doing it for social media, so it's either a setup. That's my theory, is that he's got somebody in there so he can get the social media, because those things get hits. Either that or you just suck.
Yeah, it seems like most stuff now, and I like a lot of the crowd work stuff, but it seems like most of the stuff I see is all crowd work.
Yeah, and it's a real problem. It really is. It becomes, because people then think that that's what a comedy show is.
Okay, so explain the difference between like what traditionally a true stand-up comedy show is supposed to be versus some of the stuff that gets the most popularity online.
Online, well,
Like,
the difference is, you know, there's an old heckler line that I've always used. When I came in, they gave me a microphone. When you came in, they gave you a seat. So one of us is supposed to talk and the other is supposed to shut the fuck up.
There you go.
You know, that used to be my favorite all the time. And that's exactly what stand-up should be. You're not coming in to voice your opinion. You're coming in to hear his opinion or her opinion. And, you know, where it all changed is about 10 years ago when people started getting offended and thinking that this was a one-on-one conversation. It's not.
Oh, so you saw a definitive moment where it started to shift.
Yeah. It really did through the popularity of the internet, that suddenly people now feel like they also have a voice when they come to the show. You've literally only paid to come in and sit and laugh. That's really all that you've been paid to do. And people are like, what's my money? Yeah. And you can take it and walk back out the door. It's not up for debate. It's not called debate, right? It's called stand-up comedy. So that's the beauty of being in the theaters, is that you don't get a whole lot of that. People are actually coming to see you in the clubs. That's really what changed in my career. Right after the pandemic, I told my wife, I said, I don't want to do clubs anymore, and I don't want to do cruises or anywhere that they haven't paid to come and see me specifically. And that's only in the theaters. And those people actually have come. In a comedy club, half the people are there to see the comic who's on stage, and the other half is there just to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are there to be thinking that they're going to be part of the show. And I didn't enjoy it anymore. I didn't want to do it that way. I figured I'd do a different kind of living if I had to continue doing it that way.
And that really didn't start till 4 years ago?
For me, it was the impetus to get out from the security blanket. It really was. COVID taught me a lot of things.
You say security blanket, that would be the clubs, the infrastructure.
and
explain that. How does?
Well,
because I don't, in a lot of other art forms, there's not that type of infrastructure.
Well, I mean, you have the clubs. I mean, you guys have the clubs and the club.
Yeah, but
circuit.
it's not. I guess it's not quite as structured as it seems out as an outsider looking at what y'all do.
Well, it's just because there's 15 people that own most of the clubs.
Oh,
so if you're in with those 15, then you've got work.
Oh, but if you're out,
you're out.
It used to be like that a little bit more, at least in the Texas country stuff.
Yeah.
With certain booking agents, that's changed quite a bit because of the internet.
Yeah, it's for me, everything changed career-wise, I guess 2.5 years ago, and it was based on the movie The Founder. What really changed, and it's about McDonald's, which is ironic because we're in the parking lot of a McDonald's.
Yeah, we're just in
the shadow
we're
of
just
the
in a
big
trailer in the parking lot of the McDonald's.
But it's I was watching the movie with Michael Keaton, and there's a great scene in it where the financial guy tells him, he says, "You're in the wrong business. You think you're in the hamburger business, and you're in the real estate business." And I've been telling jokes at this point, for 25 years, 26 years. And I watched the movie over and over, and this light came on, and it was like, I'm in the wrong business. Forever I thought that I was in the ha-ha business, and I'm in the ticket sales business. But it's a difference in mentality. And I had an agent in L.A., I had a manager in Boston, and I had a marketing team in Atlanta. And I called them all, and I said, listen, I don't want to do clubs, and I don't want to do cruises ever again. I really don't want to work anywhere where there's a plate of food being served to anybody.
So you guys have the same dinner issue that...
Yeah. Well, at least with you, they just have to hum along, right?
I get it.
But for us,
it's brutal.
It's a very, you have to be within the moment.
Yeah.
And especially as the show develops, because there's callbacks, there's all kinds of structure to it. But I told him I didn't want to do it anymore, that I'm in the ticket sales business. And at the time I thought, you know what, I think I can sell 400 tickets in any market that I go to.
That seems like more than most comedy clubs sell anyways.
Well, they sell about 250, but they make you do 5 shows.
Gotcha.
So you got to sell 1,200 seats, to make a good living.
Yeah, but that in the same location. That seems outrageous.
And you've also got 1,500 comedians competing for 52 jobs.
So is that it? Because in my world, it changed significantly because of the internet. You don't have built-in crowds anymore where we play. So that's a lot of venues are struggling that haven't maybe gotten on the same page. They think like, well, people still just go out to have a drink and discover a band. It's like, no, they discover people online and they go to a show. So do comedy, because that's always perplexed me, because it seems like comedy clubs are still doing the same thing that they've always done.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of them are dying.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they also, in my humble opinion, quit caring about the show itself. Like when I started, the opening act couldn't cuss at all. And the feature act could cuss a little bit, and then the headliner could say whatever you want, how you wanted it, or anything else. And it's because they got out of the show part of the business. They just put up 3 acts, and then they wouldn't put together 3 acts in a comedy club that would complement each other.
Isn't that wild? That seems like so obvious.
Yeah, you would, but once it just becomes the hamster wheel, that all they're doing is, every time you would show up to a comedy club, that's the other thing I told that staff, all my management and all this stuff. I said, every time I show up to a comedy club, my key question is, who was here last week? And they'll go, I can't remember. That's why it doesn't matter to you. So us sending you posters to have some high school kid put them out in the on the street somewhere, in the restaurants that are popular in whatever town. That's why they're still in your office. That's why when we send you the little tents, to put on your tables, that's why those are also still in the box. They don't care. Most of them don't.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that anymore. I just COVID was that grand reminder that this thing will end for me sometime soon.
How did all the people you work with take it?
Not great, because I fired everybody.
You fired them?
I fired all of them.
Because they raised a stink about it, or
no? Because they said you can't do it that way, Bill. And really, what they were trying to say is that it makes our job harder. Because if we can call 4 comedy club owners that own 8 comedy clubs apiece, that's 32 weeks that I don't have to worry about booking for you. And I can book all my other clients in the same place and work it. And I didn't want to do it that way.
Do
so
comedy agents take like 10% or?
Yeah, it's the same structure as everybody else. My first agent, my first manager and agent was a guy named C.W. Kendall, and he was a trip. I think he took 15% and signed me to a 5-year deal. And I used to call him the Colonel, because Colonel Parker. Yeah. And he was the kind of guy that goes, "Hey, Bill, listen, I got you a great gig. It pays you $1,800. The bad news is you need to know a little bit of Spanish. Also, you need to learn the guitar, and it'd be great if you could wear a yarmulke while you're up there.
Yeah, and you got to be gay."
Yes.
You're like, gosh, this is tough.
Just briefly. Yeah. They said you got to screw the elephant. First, I said no. The elephant was going to screw you, and I said no. He's got to screw the elephant.
You drive a hard bargain.
So,
good for you.
And then he was double dipping as well. So he would charge me commission, but he would also charge them to produce the show.
Okay.
So the gig would end up paying $3,000. I'd get $1,800 of it. He'd get $12 up front, and then I'd have to pay him commission on the $1,800.
When did you find that out?
It's so long ago, 20 years ago. So it was pretty easy to discover. It's pretty easy to discover. Yeah.
How'd you discover it?
Well, when you're at a corporate gig and you're getting $1,800, and they go, "This is the best $3,000 I've ever spent."
Yeah, it's that simple. They just say it.
It's that simple.
Yep. You go, ugh.
Yeah. Can I see the contract? And then they show you, and I'm like, wow, different contract than I got.
How'd you approach him?
Well, I fired him, and it's also the same time that I signed with Blue Collar. So Blue Collar, the management of them in 2000 came to see my show. Ingval, he and I are good friends, Bill Ingval, and he's the one that introduced me on stage with them at Zany's in Nashville for my audition. And it was those people and a lesbian softball team, which seems to be redundant. But
it goes back to the gay thing.
Yeah, but they were there, and about 4 other people on a Wednesday. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm not going to get this gig at all, right? And so I go out, and I just made fun of the ladies. I just dove into the crowd and did that whole thing and stayed away from the act as much as I could, because there was nobody there to see the act. And the next day, they invited me to Ruth Chris's steakhouse. And I'm literally eating like a prom date that's not going to put out. Right? I'm like, yeah, I'll take the appetizer. You bet. Because I thought, they're just going to say, "Hey, thanks." Yeah. And at the end, they signed me. And so I fired CW now that I had somebody, but he still had me for 2 more years on this contract.
Well, but you couldn't fire him based on
that, no.
All the other stuff he was doing?
Well, because you'd have to go to court and prove all those kind of things. And when you're struggling, young act, you don't have $2,000 to go hire an attorney to try to get this guy. So I just fired him, and then he sues me. He sues me for the 2 years. And my favorite story is that we settled out of court that he would have fairs and festivals, and he would have colleges for the rest of the year, and then the thing would be over. And
that's not too bad.
Not too bad. So I get flown to Nashville by the blue collar guys, management, and it was an incredible week. I got to open for George Jones and the Ryman. I got to walk down the alley and take the Tootsie's entrance, the artist entrance, back then. We also got to a private walkthrough of the Country Music Hall of Fame, on exhibits that's not out and stuff. And then we went to the IBA Convention, which is the International Exhibitor Buyers Association. Ingvall was hosting. Jeff Foxworthy got Humanitarian of the Year for building a children's hospital in Atlanta. Larry, the cable guy, was there, but he wasn't as big at all. I mean, that was just when blue collar was really out.
What year was this roughly?
So 2000, 1999, 2000, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Right before it all exploded. Johnny Cash and June Carter also made an appearance at this convention. I mean, it's big money convention. And they hadn't been seen in public for 10 months because they both had pneumonia. And I got to shake Johnny Cash's hand. I mean, you get to shake, Jesus's hand, basically. And then the next morning I got to fly back home, and I got to drive down to the Austin County Fair, which is not in Austin. Everybody knows that's Travis County. Yeah. But Austin County Fair, and I called before I get there. Now, they've had me in a 5-room hotel suite, really whining and dining. My dad was in town, the whole thing, right, in Nashville. Now we're driving down to do this county fair.
Back to it.
Yeah, well, what a reality check it was. So I get there, and I said, where is the my hotel? And they said, CW has put you up in the Wayne Motel. Okay, the motel. And it's the kind of place that
that's without a G.
Yeah, absolutely.
Correct?
Yeah.
Wayne. Okay, got it.
Yeah, Wayne, like Bruce Wayne.
Okay.
But Wayne, yeah, he owned it. And it's the kind of place that they'd hand you the key and go, I'll cover you, kid. I mean, it was in a terrible neighborhood. And it had like 1970s carpeting, and but the TV weighed 7,000 pounds. It still had a back
because
on
you
it.
tried to take it.
Yeah, no, no sense in it because the remote control was tethered to the. So yeah, it was.
You mean like it had a cable, or what are you talking about?
No, it was. There was a case for it that was locked into the nightstand, and so you had to move it that way. So it was not going to disappear, and. I literally pulled back the comforter. I laid on the sheets because I only had like 4 hours sleep, and I had to drive down this thing, and it's a 4-day thing that he's booked me for. And I take a shower, and it's one of those kind of places that you go put down the wash rags on the bathtub floor so you're not stepping on whatever gross thing. I mean, it was literally one of the worst motels. And then I drive to the fair, and as I'm walking in, there's a poster. All the people that's going to be there. Sleep at the Wheel, Roger Krager, Cooter Graw, Chris Cagle one night. And I'm in none of those pictures.
Perfect.
None of those. It says, also appearing, Mike Mesmer, hypnotist, comma, chainsaw artist, comma, clown, comma, and comedian Cowboy Bill Martin. So I got 4th billing without a picture behind the clown and the chainsaw artist, and they didn't even give them good names. I mean, I'd be more apt to appreciate it if it said Buzzy the clown, like, holy cow, Buzzy's here.
Just any clown in the world.
So I get there, and the guy that runs this thing is a great big old bellied guy. I mean, you could not have put him in central casting, make him more believable. That booked this whole thing. It was a great guy, but I get there, and you play these fairs and festivals. It's just a tin building with 3 open sides and a stage. And I get there, and I'm like, Mike, where's the audience sit? And he's like, yeah, man, you start talking, they'll all come over.
Oh.
And I said, well, that's not really how stand-up works, bud. I do a lot of callbacks. And
This
I
is
need 'em
after
there.
you just got to hang.
I just got. I was here, and now, yeah.
So people think it's hard not to. I struggle with it because it's like there's a part of you that you kind of know you're being a little bit pretentious.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
But you also know what you. I tell people all the time, young comics, you have to be in a position to win, and
Sure.
and as stand-ups, it's really hard to put on a good show. People think that if I just turn on a microphone, that it can be a good show. No, you have to have people facing forward. You have to have people paying attention. You have to have that center of attention is not only necessary, it's absolutely vital to everything that goes on.
yeah. If it wasn't necessary for like a full production of a show, like why? I mean, like in the music world, the biggest acts they spend millions of dollars on lighting and
Yeah,
all sorts of production.
yeah.
If it's not necessary, then why do they have to do it? But yet I'm going to stand over here on a stack of pallets and like do something
Right.
that people actually want to see. No,
Right.
I mean, come on.
Well, the first night was Roger Krager and Cooter Grawl, and so I tell him, and I'm supposed to go up before the first act, and then I'm supposed to go up in between the acts and introduce the act, and we come to a compromise that I'll introduce the first act, and then I'll do stand up in between the two when people are already over here.
That still sounds like a nightmare.
The first night, yeah. So the first they go up and yeah, people start filing over once the band starts playing and everything else. And I walk out on stage in between, and I go, "How y'all doing?" And some lady goes, "Get off the stage. We're waiting on Roger Krager." And I can't go after her because it's a fair and a festival. There are kids walking around,
Yeah.
and kids in strollers with balloon animals, and good balloon animals, because apparently the clown killed, right?
Just crushed.
Yeah, just crushed. I saw him in his dressing room just crying, wiping off the stuff, going, they'll know my name next time. You know.
Oh, he did
that
not
kind of
crush.
No, he did great with all the kids and stuff,
okay.
you know, walking around and everything else. But I can't go after them, and I do the show, and the 15 minutes, whatever they
So
wanted.
did they ever know that you were a stand-up comic?
Yeah. So, but we got through the first night, and I walk off stage, and Mike goes, "Hey, don't worry about it. This is kids' night," and it really was. There's a bunch of kids with FFA jackets on and beer that they stole out of their dad's refrigerator in the garage.
Hey, at least they were drinking. You know,
Yeah, at
that
least-
helped a little bit.
Not at all. Not at all. And I walk off and I throw my beer down, and he goes, "It won't be like this tomorrow." And I'm thinking, "You damn right it won't, because I'm gonna get in that Ford truck and I'm gonna drive back the 4 hours back to Fort Worth and sleep in my own bed."
Oh, good for you. I don't have the balls, dude.
No, well, I called my new manager, and he said, "Listen, if you want to walk. I don't know if I can get your money, and but if you want to walk, I sent CW all the parameters. You have to have chairs in front of you. You have to," and he's really the guy that really talked about you have to be in a position to win in this thing. And I said, "Well, I'm gonna call my dad and talk to the old man, see what he thinks." And I called him up. Now, my dad never ever cussed in front of us. Okay, occasionally if he's working on the car or something, you might hear something, but nothing like just what I was about to embrace. And my dad never ever stood up for me either. If I got in a fight in school, there was no, "Hey, I'll go to the school and clear this up." No, it was, "Hey, either take an ass whipping or learn to give an ass whipping." Yeah. So tough old man. And I called
Or I'm
him-
going to give it to you.
yeah, exactly. And I called the old man and told him what, and I mean, the F-bomb flew out of his mouth because he was also in Nashville with me, right?
Yeah.
So he just saw everything. He says, "God damn it, boy, I'm going to tell you, you call it CW, you tell him I'll kick his ass myself. You just had all these people and blah, blah, blah." And at first it's like the first time he ever stood up for me, and it made me feel good. And after a while, he just kept on doing it. And I'm like, "Okay, I get it." I go, "No, damn it, I'm telling you right now, you don't need that sumbitch at all." He said, "How much is he paying you?" I said, $6,000. He goes, "I'd stick around another day."
Really? You're going to let your pride get in the way?
I mean, it turned just like that. How much is he paying you? And at the time, it was the biggest check I'd ever made. You know,
it's a lot of money.
It was, especially in 2000. It was huge money.
Yeah.
So it was like, but yeah, I'd stick around another day. And
It does change it.
And it does. And then the next day I came out, and it was Chris Cagle, and it was an older crowd. And I had, you know, my "How's Your Mama" T-shirt. That was my catchphrase at the time, and a CD that had come out and everything else. And I did "Sleep at the Wheel" and met all those guys, and it really was an amazing next 3 days, right? And I called him, and I just, all I kept thinking is, they're paying me all this money, and all I did is about 15 minutes of work every night. You know, I went up in between and did 15 minutes, and then brought on the next one and that kind of stuff. And I thought, you know, before they really discovered that they got ripped off, I'm going to go ahead and have them cash this check when they wrote it to me. And they cashed a check for $6,000 that they paid me. And I to this day, I still remember. So $4,000 worth of merchandise in those 4 days.
Damn.
Yeah. Were
you
amazing.
slinging it yourself?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All by myself back
Yeah.
there. And Mike, the owner, his wife would be back there with me, but the whole time it had a big Texas flag that said "How's Your Mom" on it.
Yeah.
And
damn, you crushed.
yeah. And I called my dad, and it's the first time I ever drank Red Bull because it just came out, right? And I was driving back on Sunday night back to the house with the money in the console.
Oh gosh, good luck on the other end of that conversation.
Well, no, I called him. He was great. I called him, and
no,
I
I
said,
meant poor him. You were on a Red Bull and had 10K in cash driving.
Well, I called him and I said, "Hey, Pop, I want to tell you, first time ever, I've got $10,005 in my console of my truck, and I wouldn't have it if you wouldn't have said stick around." He goes, "Son, I want you to realize how many hours I got to spend behind that wheel to make that kind of money."
Yeah.
He said, "Don't let pride ever get in the way of feeding your family. It's real easy in show business to think, oh, woe is me, but you're there to provide for a family."
It also goes both ways though. Because don't do anything and everything just to make a buck. You know?
Yeah. Again, put yourself in a position to win.
Yeah, and you have to have lines.
Yeah.
Things you won't cross, things you won't do, just to
Now,
earn a dollar, right?
No, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
And I guess it's deceptive too. Even someone like your dad that loves you and knows a lot of the stuff that you probably had been through and how hard you worked and stuff. It's like, unless you're, and this goes for almost anything in life, unless you're actually the one there doing the work, you don't really know how much has gone into it. I see it a lot with like with successful business owners or anybody in entertainment, really anybody that does anything. Like, you could be a big time attorney or an accountant, and nobody's really going to know all the work that it took to really get there to be able to make that money. Like, you don't, the 15 minutes, yeah, when you break it down, like, I got paid $6K for 15 minutes. It sounds ridiculous, but you weren't getting paid for those 15 minutes. You were getting paid for the years and years that it took to even get to that point, to be able to make that money, to be prepared for that moment. So that's why I wouldn't feel as bad about turning down some opportunities, because there was a lot of other work that went totally unpaid for.
Right.
That isn't on the bottom line. You don't see it on the spreadsheet.
Well, that's why I'm reluctant to take corporate gigs. You know, they don't. Most of them don't appreciate the fact that you put in anything.
Yeah.
You know, and so we just kept on upping the price on the corporate gig.
That's kind of the way it's happened with everything.
It's like I don't. I'm going to get treated, as I found, the same if I'm making $1,500 or if I'm making 10 times that amount or whatever it is, whatever. And I found that it's still going to be in a hotel with terrible lighting, terrible sound. And I might as well, if I'm going to whore myself out, then I might as well be a well-paid whore.
I would agree with it. The money does change it a little bit. And I'm not even saying, like, I don't really think what I do, or, a lot of the art forms, like, I don't go as far as to think they're like really changing the world or something. Like, I try to keep things in perspective. Try not to take it too serious.
Right.
Kind of to what you're saying, like, your dad had to drive how many hours just to make that type of money. It's like kind of ridiculous when you really boil it down. But there's a fine balance, because then you also have to respect yourself a little bit. I'm not expecting people to just grovel over me or just treat me, like a king or something. But you've probably been in the situations too where it goes the other direction, where they literally treat you like shit.
Yeah.
Like they own you. I get that at private events. That's where I've had to kind of turn stuff down, because it's like, well, you don't own me for a day or two.
Yeah. Well, for me, I did a gig. It was a well-paid gig at a hunting ranch. One of these exotics, and my family were all hunters and everything else. And honestly, these hunting ranches, some of them, the animals are so docile because they've been hand fed, and we were there, and they literally, I don't know if you've gone to any of these, but they will pull up to all these animals and go, that one's 15,000, that one's 25,000, that one is 30,000. Shoot whichever one. And we're in a rig without a gun or anything else. We're just out. They're showing me the property and everything, and I'm watching this. I'm like, just hit it with the damn car. It's right there. At least it gets it a running chance.
Yeah.
It thinks you're gonna walk out and give it a carrot. Yeah. And then they're high-fiving and everything else. But the owner's dad, as soon as I got there in front of everybody, hey, you're the comedian, man. I love comedians. And then he proceeds to tell me the most racist joke ever. Like I would think that's funny, And that's not really my bag. It's never been my thing, It's I've always said, every time I see somebody turn their head twice to tell me a joke,
here it's coming.
Yeah, maybe you ought to just stop. Don't let the hat fool you there, brother. Yeah,
racism's quiet.
Yeah. It's louder. I've always said it's quiet up north. It's loud in the south, but it exists in both.
Yeah, which is worse?
I think up north. At least
I would agree.
At least
because you're going to get it in both, but that quiet, like weird.
Yeah. That.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
No.
I'm like, hey, bro.
Yeah. My favorite was, I was in Oklahoma City, and I was doing a comedy club, and this was years ago. And I was, let's say, dating one of the cocktail waitresses there. There was also, she was
what a great idea.
Yeah. What is it about woman with a tray? But she was also, that's back when there was still the Southwest Conference, and she was in Playboy's Girls of the Southwest Conference.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Playboys?
Yeah, Playboy.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Playboy
if this was
magazine.
like a different.
So no, Playboy magazine, Girl of the Southwest.
Okay.
And she was half black and half white, right? And but this guy walks up and he goes, "Hey man, I got a joke for you." And I go, "Well, you got to tell my girlfriend, because she loves these kind of jokes."
Well, you had already seen him look.
I already saw it.
Perfect.
I knew what was coming. And I go, Kinsley or whatever her name was, I can't remember now. And I said, "Baby, you got to come hear this." And he, just dumbfounded. I go, "See, that's the point, buddy.
Yeah.
You can't tell it in front of everybody. Don't tell it in front of me."
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So I that's about the only thing I don't like about the interaction with people, is that they automatically assume that who you are because you wear a cowboy hat.
Oh, right.
And that's really part of the reason why we started Cowboys Who Care.
It's actually a little weird too that cowboy culture got that connotation. It gets lumped into Southern culture pretty easily and pretty quickly. But for anybody that's really traveled to the deep South and then has been around like cowboy culture, they're really not very similar. They have like some similarities, but it's very different.
This won't be popular for me to say, but I think that's now in large part has to do with stuff like Yellowstone.
The similarities or the differences?
No, the fact that all the cussing and everything else that goes on in it, and all the things that are said and everything else. I've been around cowboy culture my whole life, and when you watch Yellowstone and you don't see one guy take off a hat to shake a lady's hand in the entire show, or any of the what I fell in love with the fact that how my dad was and my uncles were and that kind of stuff, that there was a sense of honor to it. And I know it's not popular to say, but I think that Yellowstone does less for the cowboy culture than it does just to promote a stereotype that people are already ready to buy into.
Well, they merge multiple things together because I guess that's the weird thing too, is within cowboy culture, if we'll call it that, there's a bunch of little genres of that as well. I mean, you have people that ranch for a living. Then you have like rodeo cowboys. Then you have, because that's like a kind of a different culture even.
Yeah.
And then like I know cattle ranchers and stuff that like wouldn't want their daughter to be with like a rodeo cowboy.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you've got more of the horse world. So like horse trainers and that whole thing. I will say, generally speaking, because I've been a horseshoer for a long time,
right.
And like a lot of my family members are, early my brother-in-law, that whole side of my family, and so I've been around a lot of like high level trainers and people who show horses, and the depiction of the way this like a stereotypical horse trainer is, and there's nuances to all of this, but like it's not that far off in that regard. But the way like an average cattle rancher operates, like no, he's not flying his chopper in to go bury a dead body, like, and then taking people to the train station. That ain't happening. And granted, they have to dramatize it a little bit, and then it kind of a little. It feels a little bit like Dallas, the TV show Dallas, right?
It absolutely is.
Yeah,
we were talking about me and my wife were talking about. There's a new show now about something on the beach, and I said they've been doing the same show forever. First it was Hawaii Five-0, then it was Baywatch, and now it's a new incarnation of the same shtick. And that's all this is. That's all Yellowstone is. It's Dallas, but now the horses are real. Yeah,
they got like a few things right, but I'm with you. Generally speaking, I don't think the true values of like the average person in that culture is not being displayed.
Well, and one Cowboys Who Care. I don't know if you know anything about it, but
isn't that well, you started it, but Resistol does it now too, or something?
I would like to think they do it, but they haven't done anything with it.
Gotcha.
Okay. And it's kind of a sore spot with me. But it started in 2010. A young lady had cancer. She was 11 years old, and her mom and dad were big fans of mine, asked me to put my name on a golf tournament to raise some money for her. And got to know her and her mom and dad. Then her cancer goes into remission. Then it came back with a vengeance, and she lost her battle with cancer in June of 2011. And we were invited to the vigil the night before they pulled the plug on her. And coming home, I was devastatedly crying. Saw what they went through, what we have with our children and stuff, and Michelle drove home, and I just started praying about it. And I knew I wanted to help, didn't know how. And then I get put on a cruise ship. I was working the cruises and stuff, and they actually put me in a crew cabin with bunk beds. And I'm pretty pissed off about it, because I'm a tall guy. That means I can't set up for a week, because literally the bunk is here, and there's nowhere else to sit in this little bitty cabin without a window. And so I have my hat box, and I put the hat up there and everything else. And the next day, I'm just trying to figure it out. And I Googled kids with cancer images, kind of opened up to the universe, see if I can find any sort of answer. And I had all these big, bright, beautiful faces, smiles, and then because where my hat was setting, because of the bunk bed, I could see my cowboy hat, and that was the aha moment. Well, these kids need cowboy hats. What 7-year-old wants to wear a wig, but what 7-year-old wouldn't want to wear a cowboy hat? So I called my wife and I said, I'm pretty sure the Lord's telling us that we need to deliver cowboy hats to kids with cancer and get involved in this world. And so we started Cowboys Who Care, and we gave away a little over 10,000 hats thanks to Resistol. And I met with Stan Redding, who was the president at the time. and now he's at American Hat. Just a great guy. But I sent him a message, and I thought, I'll start out with Resistol and Stetson, the two, and they're owned by the same company. And I'll start with the biggest, and I'll just work my way down. Maybe somebody at least see the marketing for their company, but I think I can get what I want and then get what they want. And within a day, I sent a thing to Stan, and he sent me an email that said, hey, come over to our offices in Garland if you can. And we made the appointment. I went over, and he said, you don't know this, but my stepson has been in and out of cancer treatments his whole life.
Whoa.
And the warehouse is yours. Whatever you need. What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I didn't know how to get this far, but I knew how to build a website. So I built a website, so we'd already filled out all the paperwork and hired an attorney, and it's a process to become a nonprofit. And I said, I'm going to build a website. And I built a website, and like 2 days later from that, a lady sent me a deal and said, hey, I saw your post on social media, and then I went to the website. I've got a summer camp for kids with cancer in Illinois. Can you provide cowboy hats? This year it's rodeo.
Wow.
And I said, how many you need? And she said, we got 300 kids. So I called Stan at Resistol, and I go, I need 300 hats, 400 actually to fit everybody. And he said, come get them. So me and my wife and my daughter went over and picked them up, weeks later, and drove to Illinois to a summer camp. And that's how Cowboys Who Care started. And I really, I thought it was a couple of things. One, rodeo is still the only family-oriented business in the entire country, and it's an American business as well, the rodeo world. And I just thought, it's just people can really get behind this thing, and we could really do an impact. And we were going strong until the pandemic happened, and then we couldn't get into the hospitals, and then we had to pivot. So I came up with a program called Request a Hat. So people literally wrote in and said, hey, my kid has cancer or whatever, and we would send them a brand new hat straight out. We did that for 2 or 3 years, and I thought, it's not going anywhere. And I need rich folks to talk to rich folks, because the one thing, I grew up poor, and the one thing I have found is that rich folks love to talk to rich folks, and they love to talk about how not rich they are.
That was your experience? They love to talk about how not rich they are?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, Lord, we only had to go to the, we only went to Europe for 10 days this year.
Oh, they don't even know that they're being pretentious.
Yeah,
that's terrible. Yeah.
And it's that way in the, this, and the more expensive those horses get.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So they love that.
They ho hum the $120,000 for
That our entry fee was, so what do you do as we're talking in $1 million? Fifth wheel.
There's like a tinge of, not even a tinge. There's a heavy part of it that's kind of complaining.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, wait, do you not even realize? Have you looked around here for a second?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
A little weird.
Absolutely. And, but I thought, I can't get it to grow. And then I also had this vision. Every rodeo has Tough Enough to Wear Pink, right? And they've been doing it now for 20 years with Wrangler, and it's for breast cancer awareness. As a matter of fact, I used to be part of it, even in stand-up comedy. I reached out to Wrangler, and I said, I want to be part of this program, even though I'm doing stand-up. And so every Saturday I'd wear a pink shirt on stage, and I would talk about this program. But now this is years later with Cowboys Who Care. And a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I came up with this idea that the ribbon that for pediatric cancer is gold. Well, every rodeo, they're going for gold, right? So why not have a Go for Gold night and for pediatric cancer and awareness and research, more than awareness, research and help, and maybe help a Ronald McDonald House or anything else. But I also know that rich folks like to talk to rich folks, and so I need to be out of less of the equation. So I approached Resist All to take it over, and it hasn't gone anywhere since. I mean, they took it over, but yeah,
But just nothing's really happened.
nothing happens at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's been, and I debated on whether or not, even when we were talking about this now, to even go into that part of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's still a great idea. I think going for the gold, every rodeo, everything from high school to the junior leagues to the senior league in rodeo could get behind this, because it is a family-oriented business.
The part with the charity stuff that I find difficult is figuring out like where the money's actually going.
Yeah, that's
Because even the awareness thing at this point,
well,
we know we're aware.
Yeah, that was my whole thing with the Tough Enough to Wear Pink. I'm pretty sure everybody's aware of breast and cancer.
Yeah, and like I think pretty unanimously, like nobody likes it.
Yeah,
I don't think we're like convincing. I don't think somebody's seeing the pink T-shirt and it's like, oh, you know
yeah.
what? Not a fan of it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like I think we should do something about it.
Yeah, but I think that my whole thing was when they when I asked them to take it over, was that they would get somebody that one, worked for the company, that knew how to grow a charity. I don't have that skill.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Two, that they maintain the story of how it all started, because for Ashley Miller, she's really what sparked this entire thing. And three, that they grow it into something uniquely big, uniquely big. And I still think there's an opportunity there. If you've ever gone to a hospital, and we would make these hospital visits, and you could see the smile on not only the kids' faces, but also mom and dad.
Yeah.
And the cowboy, that was my whole point. What I was trying to get with Yellowstone is that that cowboy hat can actually be pretty magical. It's not like a ball cap like what I'm wearing now. You put on the cowboy hat, and a lot of these hats, these kids had never seen a cowboy hat. Never. We delivered to a Orthodox Jewish hospital in the Bronx, and so when we first came in, and I had 4 other cowboys with me, you got looks from people like, "What the hell are y'all doing here? Are y'all here to make fun of us?" I mean, because they had the whole thing, the curls here and the everything, and most of those kids had never even seen a cow except maybe in the Bronx Zoo.
Yeah.
And then walk through there and the imagination that these kids would have with the hat. And that's where I think that I would like to see a little bit. I grew up in a generation when you knew John Wayne was the good guy, and I know that those people don't exist in most of our lives. I mean, you and I have a mutual friend, Andy Hoover. He's a good guy nearly all the time. Yeah, most of us have blurred lines on what's good and bad, and we're human. But I just thought that the cowboy hat it should be also looked at with honor.
I can't really think of anything else in American culture, maybe other than like the American soldier. But even then, I can't think of anything that has a longer tradition that's more romanticized in American culture than like the American cowboy.
Well, it still exists.
I know it still exists, but then it also predates even like a World War II hero, right?
Yeah.
Like you're like way
1880s.
more 1800s. So I really can't think of anything else that's more romanticized and still around, and then has such like it has certain values so directly attached to it typically as well, just through like film and things. I really can't think of anything else. It's a powerful thing. So yeah, you throw a cowboy hat on a kid's head and it like kind of opens up a whole world of possibilities, but it still seems so grounded and rooted in some really great core values. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Well,
it's at a point to where I got to figure out if I want to continue doing something else, with it. I love the idea of the going for the gold. So
yeah, that's great.
I do own the website now, Going for the Gold.
Going for the Gold, you own that website?
I own the
Well,
domain.
shoot, you could probably sell that domain name and make more money than the charity would ever make.
You think so?
Probably. Think about. I mean, dadgum, dude.
I know. Maybe
Going for. Is it the Gold?
the gold.
Ooh, if it was going for gold, it might be freaking
Yeah.
some serious dough. Yeah, sell it to a gold company and then just use that money for the charity.
You think, I like the way you think. Yeah. So
Yeah, it might make more. I don't know.
but it's a big part of what I would like to see a little bit more of the culture embrace, because these kids do need help and the families really do need help.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is that we were really 10,000 hats. That's some smiles. And then maybe you could also, because you don't know that when a kid gets cancer like that, a lot of times mom can't work or dad can't work, either one of them, because they're going back and forth to the treatments and everything else, and it can be pretty devastating to a
So is
family.
it something that you would like to just kind of take back over,
Well,
or just I mean, you do it together, but clearly somebody needs to spearhead it.
Yeah, I know that I've decided that I was going to take off 2024 and think about it and pray about it and see where it lands. Yeah.
So prayer is a big part of your life.
It is. I grew up in the church. When I was 16, 17, I thought I would probably preach. And then by the time I was 19, knew that probably wouldn't be happening. And but then it's a big part of it. I owe a lot to prayer. And when people tell me that God's not real, I have instances where in my worst times, he was. I don't know how much time we got. Have we already blown through our?
Dude, I'm down
good?
to. How are you on time?
I am. I got nothing.
Yeah, because I could talk to you forever.
Yeah.
So I figure like probably 4 or 5 more hours, probably.
Yeah. Well, we're good. I'm gonna have to have something to eat. But
Yeah, I was kidding.
No, me too. So I didn't know I had my oldest daughter till she was 16. Okay. So I'll tell you the whole story, because it's actually part of my testimony.
And you're like, to be clear, you're like pretty devout Muslim.
Yeah.
Okay.
Methodist. Almost the same. Almost the same. But we can dance. So I was 4 years before this. Now, I think you also know that I write songs, right?
I did know that.
Yeah. So, and that's where I really thought my show business career would be. Since I was 5 years old, I've been writing songs and poems or whatever. But 4 years before all this happened, I heard a song by Shelley Wright on the Unknown, called Unknown. And there's a line in it that says, "I say a prayer at 11:11." Now, this is right when I started stand-up comedy. And I was about as far away from my faith as I'd ever been. But I just I heard the line, and I started saying a prayer at 11:11. And
Well, when you say like as far away from your faith as you've ever been, what do you mean?
I was divorced. I was drinking all the time. If I didn't have my kids, I was hammered drunk most of the time. I was running around catting, doing the whole thing, living a life just really for me. And although I kept telling people I was a good dad, because I would get my kids on, my son every other weekend and every Wednesday, and then at one point it changed, and I had him from Sunday to Thursday, and because of my travel schedule. And I told everybody it was that guy, but I was also the guy that was out in a bar every night spending money I didn't have, and spending money that I could have used for all kinds of other stuff to maybe even finish my education or whatever, but I was doing stand-up and I was doing the whole thing. But I just started asking for forgiveness and thankfulness and guidance and everything else, right? And I was amazed on how many times I would look at a digital clock and there would be 4 ones there, so it gave me a restart to the day, twice a day. And I mean, that first 3 or 4 years in stand-up, the money's just not. I went from open mic to headliner in 2 years.
That seems fast,
It's
right?
incredibly fast.
Okay.
But the money, you're still making crap money, and you're spending a lot of that on the expenses to get there. And then when you are there, you're spending too much of it on the bar, on all kinds of stuff. But for 4 years, it became a stopping point in my day when I would say a prayer. So then I land Blue Collar, and they run a big article in the Fort Worth Star Telegram back when everybody read the paper in the art section. Big picture of me on that front page of it. Even took it over at Boswell High School where I went to school, with my old leather jacket on and the whole thing. Local guy does good kind of story. And a couple of days later, I get a call from my ex-wife that said, "Hey, I got a call from your daughter, and she wants to meet you." Now, the story with that was that there was a girl when I was 18 years old that we weren't even dating, but something happens, as we all know as grown-ups. And 8 days later, she said that she was pregnant, right? And from our perspective, I told my dad about it. It was our first real conversation that we ever had, my dad, about real life stuff. And he said, let's talk to him, and, let's do a blood test. Let's make sure it's yours. And then we'll go from there. And we sat down with them, and they sat down, and now two grown-ups, her dad and my dad, were making decisions on what I'm doing at 18, And her dad threw my parents and myself out of their house, that their daughter never had to explain anything or take any sort of test or anything else. And then it just kind of went away after that. So I honestly, for years, thought that I would get a phone call, but it would be an apology. "Hey, I'm sorry I ever put you up to this." Because it literally was 8 days later that she said that she was pregnant, right?
So she was or she wasn't?
She was.
Okay, she was.
But because they wouldn't do the blood test, I honestly didn't think that, I had a child out there. And then now the blue collar thing happened. They said that they never saw the thing. But needless to say, I called my attorney, and he's like, I just don't want you to open yourself up to, 16 years of back child support, because that can be financially devastating. And I said, well, I want to know. I want to know what's going on. And so we decided to do the DNA test. Now you don't even have a blood test. Now you got a DNA test, right? So it's not like Maury Povich or anything else. It's pretty seedy. And those people literally treat you like a criminal, right? Like you're a deadbeat guy, like you had to be brought in to prove that, this
Well,
thing.
and your perspective probably was like, well, if it is my kid, like,
yeah,
I want to be.
And she's been told her whole life, I find out, that I was her father, right? She's been told that her whole life.
Wow.
And now, and I take pretty good pride in being a pretty good dad,
Yeah.
And my son and I were pretty close, and my mother's passed away by this point. My grandmother's gone. So the two people that would be there for me, with me at this thing, are not there. And nobody's there with me. I'm absolutely alone in life, right? And the lady there is pretty curt about the whole thing. You need to initial here. You need to sign here, and I sign it. She goes, you need to date it. And I said, what's today's date? She said 11/11.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I literally felt the hand of God on my shoulder. It's like, hey, I set you up for 4 years, so you're not alone. Sign this thing, and let's see what happens. And with tears in my eyes, I signed the thing and dated, and it came back 99.9999998. So there's still a chance.
Yeah. So you took him to court.
No, and then once, so we decided that, I asked her if it'd be okay that we meet in the chapel of the hospital where she was born. I figured if that's where she started her life, that's where we should start our life. And now, here we are so many years later. And I mean, it's been years later. She's 38. So, and she's the principal at Springtown Middle School.
Really?
And we're very, very close. Once I met her, I didn't even need the DNA test. She is so much like me. It's an amazing study on nurture versus nature, because we both are naturally left-handed, ambidextrous, actually. We both mumble when we get tired. We both laugh at the same thing. She looks like the old man. You know, she really is. She's a better version of me, and I can honestly say that. But yeah.
So when you found out, though, you were right in the thick of like kind of living a life that you knew you shouldn't, right?
No, when I found out, well, when the whole thing happened, I tell my daughter all the time, I'm not sure if she's my best work, but she's my quickest.
Yeah.
So she loves that line. No, but yeah, when I was 18, yeah, but I'd been living on my own since I was 15 years old. So, yeah, I was.
Well, no, but when you had her, well, yeah, I mean, you were young and being a goofball.
Yeah.
Or when you, I guess, made her.
Yeah.
But when you found out, you were already 30, right? Like you had.
Yeah,
you were 30.
I was 34 years old, I think.
Yeah, and you
34,
were
35.
well into your comedy career, 4 years into your comedy career.
Yeah.
And at that time, when did you? So, like you said, you rededicated your life to Christ. Like, when did that happen?
For real. Quit playing around with it.
Yeah.
In 2016.
Whoa. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was still praying and everything else, and I tell people all the time. I tell my kids, I get tired of people saying, "What we need to do is bring prayer back to school." Prayer is always in school. Prayer is an individual event. Prayer is something that you can do. No, I tell my kids all the time, when they say you can't pray in school, that's a lie. You can pray anywhere that you want to.
Agreed.
You know, when Daniel was in the lion's den, he prayed, right? He was not with anybody.
Yeah.
It was not a public display of prayer. You know, a relationship with God, what a lot of people get bogged down in, it's a personal relationship. You know, I've actually had people at a church once tell me that, how come you don't raise your hands in the thing? I said, because my God's more of a low five kind of God. You know, if it really is a personal relationship, why do you care?
Yeah.
Why do you care?
Yeah.
You know, and I think we spend too much time in this country caring about what other people do, say, and think. You know, one of my favorite jokes I'm doing right now is that racism is taught in the home, right? I was fortunate that I didn't grow up with racism. Like, my mother loved literally everyone. She didn't care what color you were, who you slept with. If you came into her house, you were a family. She would feed you, treat you warmly. And on the same token, my dad was also not racist, because he hated everyone equally. He didn't care what color you were, who you slept with. He didn't like you.
He was just
and
kinda
didn't
mad,
want you
yeah.
in the house.
Yeah.
So, but when you live with that, that it truly is on the merit of your actions, then when you've been raised that way, I think that helps. I
Yeah.
think it needs to be taught more in the house, and that yes, kids, you can pray at school.
Yeah.
Bow your head, close your eyes, and say whatever you want to.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, most of the stuff that Jesus ever taught isn't really practiced a whole lot in like popular Christian culture.
Well,
even the idea of praying, like, it's actually always kind of bugged me a little bit. Like, I didn't get saved till I was 26. And it's always kind of perplexed me. It bugged me. A lot of stuff in popular Christian culture bugs me still to this day. Like, even praying in public, I find to be a little bit bizarre. Because, like, what are we really communicating? Like Jesus even talked about, like, go do it in the privacy of your own home.
Yeah.
You know, go into your closet, close the door,
Right.
so you're not like out like with all the other hypocrites out praying in the streets. So even like whether you're in church or you're out in public and stuff, just kind of making a show of it, I find to be like a little too cavalier.
No, I laugh because what drives me insane at church. You want to hear what drives me insane? Just start talking. Just say anything. Just anything.
Yeah. So the other
Yes,
day, I was
Lord.
going,
Amen,
yeah,
Lord.
and then
Yes, Lord.
then I was gonna walk
Yes.
up across the street.
Yes. I'm like, shut
like
up.
like everything's a prophecy.
Yeah.
Well, this is all popular Christian culture now.
Yeah. The church I found, it's really a cute older church. It's an older congregation. Even when the choir stands up to sing, several of us are in the back counting. Oh, they're all here. Oh, thank goodness, because they're that old.
Yeah.
But it's the preacher there is closer to what I tend to think. That it's a very personal relationship.
Yeah, I sometimes get a little like I totally understand what you're saying. I absolutely agree. But there is, like, from my vantage point and with what I believe about Christianity is that he's not giving anyone personal revelation that like disagrees with what's he's already put in the Bible. And so sometimes the personal relationship thing can start to go down a rabbit hole where it's like, who are you trusting? Are you trusting your own thoughts and your own feelings, or are you trusting the God of the Bible? Because he's already given us a lot of direction and instruction. And so, I talk to a lot of people that, well, the Lord told me this. And it's like, okay, the Lord told you to divorce your wife? Like, I get it. But then we start going down this rabbit hole of like personal happiness and personal fulfillment. And like the Bible talks about, like, the heart is desperately deceitful. Who can know it? You can't trust yourself, basically.
Yeah, for me, I think it.
I'm probably taking that. I know what you're saying.
No. It's for me. It's some of it has to do with the fact that kindness, I think, needs to be given a little bit. Forgiveness needs to be used more. I mean, we go into church and we'll say the Lord's Prayer and not listen to any of the actual words in it.
You know what? Okay, so that you brought that up. I've always thought the Lord's Prayer was so goofy to recite. I understand the intent behind it, like, totally down with. I get it. Right. But I've always thought like God's kind of sitting there, because the way it's presented in the Bible is Jesus says, this is how you pray. Like, he's giving us an example of how to pray, like almost like a blueprint. And then I just like to think of him like with the disciples, and he's like, all right, so this is how you pray. And he starts saying it, and they start reciting it after him. Our Father. And he's like, no. Our Father. And they're like, our Father who art in heaven. He's like, no, I'm trying to tell you this is how you do it. Like, you don't have to say it exactly. Like, I want to know what's in your heart. Like, I want you to express yourself. And then we just, our Father who art in heaven. And then we just recite it right back to him. I've always thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
but a mild digression.
No. It's there are things that ritually that's where I think that people get bogged down. Also.
Oh, okay.
There was I didn't experience, but my brother, we both decided to go to this church, and I wasn't there. I was on tour, and the guy behind him, like the choir sang and they clapped. And the guy behind him was like, hey, you're not supposed to clap. Shut up. If I feel like clapping, I'm clapping. How does that?
Goofy, dude.
Yeah, that's the Lord told me that. What did he tell you, that I shouldn't clap?
Well, it goes on the other side to it too, because some of the churches that I go to tend to be a little bit drier. They're not very theatrical or animated at all. And it goes the other way, where some of the pastors will be like, can we get a little bit more, Yeah. And it's like, well, I agree with not like muting it. Like, if somebody feels it.
Now, as a musician, do they have a band?
I can't stand the music thing. And it seems a bit ironic because I play.
Right.
But it's tough to explain, because numerous people now have tried to get me to do it. And like, I guess, lead worship or whatever. And it's always just kind of weirded me out. The whole thing's weirded me out a little bit. Like, I want it to be a group. It's supposed to be like corporate worship, like people doing it together. Right. And I don't even necessarily think there has to be music. I don't think there's anything wrong with there being music. But at some point, when it starts to just distract from like the point, it starts to get a little bit weird, where it's like there's a light on the lead singer and he's up there like doing his thing.
Oh, it just felt like a concert.
I think it's really bizarre. And then I'm on the outside of the worship, the Christian band thing. Like, I'm on the other side of that. So like, I talk to the musicians that go and play in churches, and a lot of those guys aren't Christians, like self-admitted. They're like, I'm not into that stuff. It's freaking weird. but they're employed by churches and they play in the bands and they have green rooms for the bands and they show up, you know, hungover or whatever. And then they go out there and play and then they go back in the green room and make fun of the people giving the sermon, which a lot of the stuff that they tell me that they hear in these churches, I'm like, yeah, I'd be making fun of that too. This is ridiculous.
You want to hear my favorite joke, and it's not mine. I normally don't do jokes, but
a joke.
Yeah.
Is that
like a street joke? Yeah. So these
is
are
it
not
different than
it's different than a bit. A bit is what I've written. Okay.
Okay.
But a joke,
a joke,
just a regular joke.
These would be like my type of thing.
But this guy goes to heaven and a guitar player. And if you've heard it, you can stop me. But if not, it makes better for the podcast if you just laugh at the end. But this guy goes to heaven, a guitar player.
I'm glad you told me the end too.
Yeah. So just so you know, I'll point at you.
Yeah.
And but this guy goes to heaven and he's a guitar player. And St. Peter's like, oh, dude, I got you down. You're in the heaven band already, and you're gonna love it. I mean, it's amazing. It's got an amazing green room. Okay, every snack, every beer you want is in there. We've got merchandise being sold for you. You don't have to touch it. It's going to be amazing. In the band. Oh, Keith Moon on drums. We've got Jimi Hendrix on lead guitar. We've got Elvis and Frank Sinatra singing backup.
Wow.
We got Mozart doing all the charts. Said every night, it's a packed house. It's the most incredible night, and you're just going to enjoy it. And he goes, wait, if they're singing backup, who's singing lead? And he goes, Jesus got a girlfriend.
It's who is it's Yoko Ono.
It's Yoko Ono. Yeah, Jesus got a girlfriend.
Yeah.
So, but that's the way it felt. You know, so our little church, we don't have a band. You know,
Yeah.
and I get it. But there are times that I think that people are going to see the messenger and not the message, and that's the biggest difference for me. And what is that? And even what you said with the personal relationship with God, that's the good and the bad. You know, is that personal relationship is just that. How do you define that? Well, that really becomes your definition of it. You know. But if we just try to look, I know it sounds very hokey and very 60s to say, but if we could just try some kindness and generosity to your neighbor, love thy neighbor. If you could just try those two principles, imagine how far this world could get.
It's a little bit ironic that you're freaking Cowboy Bill. I'm like, whatever, into the Western cowboy thing, and we would be considered like conservative, traditional type people, probably. But yet some of the things that we adhere to sounds like a little bit more like an old school, like liberal in some ways. There's some live and let live. There's like peace, love, kindness. I just find it a little bit interesting that some of that stuff
I think the older that you get, the more you realize, you know, like I go to my grandson's football or baseball game, and you know, one of them is 11 and the other one's 8. And you see and hear the ranting on the sides. It's
wild, man.
All over the place. And the older that you get, the more you realize, first of all, none of those kids have an ounce of possibility of making it to the next level.
Yeah, 0%.
Nobody.
Yeah.
So why is anybody worked up on anything that they're doing? Let them enjoy the game. Let them get through the game. But I'm always amazed. The older that I get, the more you just want to walk up and down and just whisper in people's ears, it don't matter.
Yeah.
This don't matter.
Yeah.
What you're doing with your kid, yelling and berating them and then getting them in the car and telling them that you missed a tackle and all that other stuff, that's going to matter, because years from now, he'll be in therapy talking to somebody about how the old man didn't think that anything that he did was right.
Maybe there's a part of me too that
I want competitiveness. Don't get me wrong. There's a balance.
There is. I know. It's
there
really
is a
tough.
balance. But at one point, when you have taken yourself out of the equation that it's all about you and what it looks like to the rest of the parents that you aren't yelling at.
Well, yeah, why you're doing it is...
I understand competitiveness. You got to be competitive in this. You have to train a child on surviving but at some point, I coached for a long time baseball, and I would tell my parents all the time, listen, here's what you're not going to yell. Lay off the high ones. Why do you swing at that? Bring up your elbow. I don't do it. If you want to come to the practices, we'll do that during practice. If you want to yell any of that kind of stuff. But once they're at the game, they already have enough pressure on them at all. Let's see if they can just hit the ball.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if that happens.
Yeah.
And then, because none of those kids can, place a ball or anything else at 18 years old. Just let them swing and let them enjoy it.
Yeah.
And let them, if they're upset about losing, that's a good trait. You don't want to lose. It is a competitive world. But at some point, you got to find that balance. And I see way too many people way out of control in those things.
Yeah, they're probably way out of control in a bunch of other areas of their life, too.
Absolutely.
Not that I'm the freaking beacon of control and discretion, but...
I wasn't, when I used to coach even before my son was born, I got thrown out of more YMCA, and that's Young Men's Christian Association baseball.
You know what? I guess I forgot that YMCA was a Christian organization.
It used to be. Yeah, I don't think it is anymore.
What's the C now?
It's still Christian, but I'm not sure.
Just the whitewatered Christian, like we're talking about, for sure. My mom my dad she'd buy him those big old boxes of those blow pop, whatever, the lollipops. And she'd make him sit there and suck on lollipops because he'd get thrown out of basketball games and stuff.
Yeah, it's like
he wasn't too crazy, but
and I've also been an umpire just once, and I don't know how those guys.
Dude,
do
you
that.
kind of have an umpire vibe. You've also got the stature for it. You kind of have that.
Well, I don't have. I don't have the temperament because I will.
You'll twist off.
I will twist off. You start yelling at me about balls and strikes, and we got
about Little League. Yeah, I don't know how to. I don't have any kids, but I'm really talking out of my ass. But I don't know how to develop tenacity and like pushing through adversity and being tough, I guess, while still cultivating some tenderness and kindness and thoughtfulness. I feel like that's a tough line to.
Well, I not that I've gotten it right, but what I have is 3 kids that are pretty level. A lot of it has to do with the fact that you get down on their level, eye-to-eye contact, so you're not up here, you're actually at eye level. Also talking deep, in anger. It's tough on a kid. My dad was a bully. So did that make me tougher? Not at all. And the less I, as a kid, didn't want to be emotional because I was a writer. I was an expressive kid. I was all those kind of things. I was also a drummer and all those things. My dad saw me play drums twice, and I played for the Texas State Orchestra. He saw me play at my brother's graduation, and he saw me play at my graduation. He didn't want to have anything to do with me or the drums. And what he used to call the drums was not the most flattering either.
Yeah.
And but he was a bully to me, and I didn't want to be that guy. But I also know that you have to raise a child to be strong as well. So there is a balance. And some of that has to do with talking. And as I tell young fathers all the time, the key to raising a good child, in my humble opinion, I hear this all the time. If you don't stop that, I'm going to knock your teeth out.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, that's a weird statement.
Well, it's weird in the fact that after he does it, you don't knock his teeth out. Now you're the one that is taught that your word doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
So don't draw a line you can't cross.
Exactly. So what you're saying is that parents need to.
Well, if you say it, you better do it.
I
don't think you should. I don't think you should do it. I don't. Really believe in the abuse. But I see it all the time.
Yeah, it's just empty words.
Empty words all the time, and then you wonder why they don't do what you say.
Yeah.
So if you say you're going to take away the PlayStation for 10 days, it's 10 days, or whatever the case may be. As a divorced dad, that's the one thing that I tried to make sure that if I told the kids I was going to be there Thursday at 5 o'clock, I was there Thursday at 5 o'clock.
You do what you say what you're going to do.
Yeah, and
regardless of if anyone else around you is doing what they say they're going to do.
Right.
Because it's easy to fall into the trap of like, well, you don't, especially in marriage. And like as a man, that's something I try to reflect on a lot is and I'm not saying my wife doesn't follow through or anything, but personally, I believe in terms of being like a leader, that requires you to do things that other people aren't willing to do and hold yourself to a standard potentially that other people are not going to hold themselves to. And you need to do it regardless of if anyone else is going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's like, sounds all great and bold to say until you're confronted with that, maybe a lot even, and you're around people that are just not holding themselves to the same standard. And you're able to suck yourself into that and say, well, they're not doing it.
Well, I think that also falls back into our lives of show business. One of the reasons why I've been able to make money in this business for 28 years, where so many comics have failed and continue to fail, it's the same thing, and I'm sure in your business, people fall in love with the lifestyle of it and not the business part of it, that the discipline of it, that, yeah, I can't get hammered every night on stage and expect this to continue on. Yeah, maybe I'm having success because I have one song out that's doing well. I can't tell you how many people that I opened for in country music that were hell-bent on being a diva because they had a song out, and they was doing well. And then my old manager used to call it Miss Mill cramps. Next time you see them and that second song hasn't hit as well, they're so much more humble. They're so much more nice. There's, the nicest people that I've ever met in this business were the biggest stars. The biggest, Straight was great. And I'm going to drop some names. I've toured with a lot of guys. I was the opening act for George Jones for a couple of years. Whoa. And then but I worked also with Loretta Lynn and Rascal Flatts. I was on the CMT tour for a while with Brad Paisley. They were great. Some of the people that only had a couple of hits out were absolute jerks.
I've definitely observed that. The people at the highest point of the industry, and this kind of goes, it's not even just in showbiz, what I've noticed, people at the pinnacle of whatever it is you're doing are typically some of the most humble, nicest people. A lot of the people in the middle that are, I guess, trying to get there or something, some of them are a bit misguided. Typically, that's probably why they haven't got there. We tend to almost think as a society that you have to screw somebody or treat people terribly to get to the top. And that's not what I've noticed. Like typically people you can't, especially today with the internet and stuff, like news travels really, really fast, and you just can't be treating everybody like shit and screwing everybody forever and still remain. Maybe you can get there quick, but you ain't going to stay there.
Well, the purist, I remember just blasting Garth Brooks when it came out, but that it was pop country and the whole thing. But he would also massage those fans. If he had to stay out and 2.5 hours of signing autographs after the show, he did that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And he would go to a radio station that was just on the map, barely, and go in and talk to the DJ for 2 hours and that kind of stuff. And that goes back to what this whole conversation started with, that there is so much work that has to go into it before they ever see what actually came from it, and put in that legwork. And there are no shortcuts. I'd have young comics ask me, they're like, hey, how are you getting booked everywhere, and how are you selling tickets and everything else? And I said, well, listen, I don't talk at night, especially if I'm having cocktails. That's my time after the show. If I'm having a couple of beers and a couple of shots of tequila or whatever after the show, I don't want to talk business. But I'm available. I get up every day by 7:30, even on the road, At 12:30 I go to lunch nearly every day at about the same time. So if you want to talk then, I'm great. And then, you stay in a condo with them at the club or whatever, because that's where the club would put you up. You wouldn't hear from them at the morning. At 12:30 rolled around, you don't hear anything, and then finally you come back from lunch and they're like, yeah, I scored some pot or whatever, and then I had a girl that whatever, and you want to talk now? No, now we're back into my time.
Yeah.
Once I get into 3:00, now I got to get into show mode, and I'm going to start looking at this set because I got to talk for an hour and you got to talk for 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had to lean into the process pretty hard in the last few years. I'm enjoying like the slow burn and the grind of it. But you see a lot of people around you that have these quick, just kind of meteoric rises out of seemingly nowhere. And I don't wish for it. I'm glad it didn't happen to me. 'Cause the perspective you gain, and then also having to really enjoy the process and like the actual thing that you're making and the work that you're putting in becomes the thing that you get the most joy and fulfillment out of, rather than just the outcome, because the outcome is so fleeting. And as I've gotten a little bit older, and you can see people have these quick hits and these quick rises, and then the way up is easy. It's that way back down that starts to get, especially if you don't love the process, then what are you doing?
Waylon Jennings said you have your whole life to make your first album, and then you got 9 months to make the second.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people fail, that they put all of it in that first one, all the effort, all the grind, all the stuff, and didn't think about, well, what happens after this point and that kind of thing. And
or nowadays it can just happen. I mean, you just, first song you upload to TikTok, you don't even have to have anything out, and then they're scrambling to put something out.
Yeah. And what do you think about this? The Richmond and Richmond.
Yeah,
that's one of those.
That's the same thing. Yeah,
I mean,
hopefully he's mentally grounded enough to be able to handle it. I don't know, but you can see some pretty amateur things from the get go, like his whole ticket debacle, where he said that's ridiculous that they're charging $100 a ticket, and then he like threw the venue under the bus. It's like, you freaking moron. Yeah, like you charged $100K or whatever to go play that show.
Yeah.
How do you think, who's paying for that?
Yeah.
Like, don't charge so much.
No,
it's such a detachment from how like the whole thing works. And then, if you did grind it out and you had played that venue for the last decade, and you sold tickets for $10 for the last decade, and that venue owner kept believing in you and said, we're going to get there one day. And you finally got to the point where like he was able to pay you a lot of money. He was finally able to make some money on you. What a freaking win-win. That's the American success story.
Right.
But he has no perspective of that. So then it's just like, and then, who knows? I don't know the guy, but it sounds like there's a little part of it too, where you get so far into the world of like kind of waving a flag about everything, like you're some beacon of just moral good in the American way,
right?
That starts to become more of what you are. So then you have to find a cause in everything that you do, and then meanwhile you just burn a bunch of bridges. Like, who was under that brush fire that you just lit? Well, there's a guy that owns a business, and there's promoters. Like, there's all sorts of people that make money too, man. It's not all about you. And
well, like Steve Martin said in The Jerk, it's a profit business.
Yeah. And profit's not bad.
It is the American dream. We're all looking to invent the pet rock.
Yeah, sure.
No matter what business you are in.
I mean,
but that you can sell. Ingval told me, I put out 2 specials, a Christmas special and a regular special on Amazon Prime at the same time. And Ingval, he and I were talking about it. And he's like, Billy, you really got to be careful. I put out 10 albums in 11 years, and a couple of them, I wasn't as proud of the other one. And I said, the difference between you and me, Bill, is that you have the hit. You had Here's Your Sign. And you can tour with Here's Your Sign for the rest of your career, and you're still going to sell 900 seats. And that's still a hell of a great living. 900 seats in the theaters at great living. I'm still looking for that hit. I'm still looking for whatever hit that is. And that's what I mean by pet rock. Even in our business, everybody, especially the difference between your business and my business, they want to hear y'all's hits. You know, if you ever want to get everybody to go to the restroom, have the Eagles say, "This is off my new album."
Oh, for sure. For sure.
You know, I tell young recording artists all the time, I said, what I would always say if I was that person is, hey, you guys want to hear the new Tim McGraw song? And they're like, yeah, it hadn't been released. I got it. And then play
it.
Your song and then go, all right, that was actually my song.
Yeah, you can live by the sword and die by the sword. Everything that we do is subjective.
Yeah.
Completely.
Absolutely.
There's some objective standards of like, typically this works the best. People like this type of stuff the best, but it's totally subjective. So we can't, like, I try not to get mad if somebody doesn't like something or it's not presented in the way that they would like it. You can trick people and like in that scenario, they might like it because it might be great, but presented as one of your songs, it changes the entire dynamic.
It does.
Of how it's subjectively perceived.
Yeah, isn't it weird?
It's very weird, but that's also how the Eagles got a huge career, was from subjective perception.
Yeah.
None of it was objective to begin with, so you can't really get mad when it's not at the end.
Well, you know, for comics, the question, I was asked this the other day, who's the funniest comics that you see? And that is such a bullshit question, because
you ask comics that typically.
No, somebody asked me that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was asked that in an interview for radio, and because I said the most popular comics aren't the funniest comics. A lot of times you can go to a comedy club and you can see a guy that's absolutely destroying a room, but he can't sell 8 tickets, you know? And that's all about the perspective that you're talking about.
Showbiz, man. It's how you make people feel.
Yeah. Suddenly it's who's funnier. Well, it's who sells the most tickets. Really is how we're judged. Yeah, there are guys that are out doing arena tours right now. I don't think he's the funniest guy out there, but he's selling, 30,000 tickets.
Yep.
How can you argue with that?
Yeah, and if you're doing that same type of art, you're chasing that same thing, what a rabbit hole to go down. If you start focusing on anything anybody else is doing, it's like, good luck. You just can't
that comparison, that goes back to the Bible and that kind of thing. But comparing your that's a rabbit hole. That's something I've been guilty of my whole career.
I think we all have, to varying degrees. But you can also let yourself slip into it too. I can feel myself slide into it too much at times.
It's real easy with the internet.
Oh, it's super
the internet.
easy.
You pull it up and suddenly, Heckler owns comic owns Heckler about cops, and you see it's got 14 million views, and you're like, he didn't own him. First of all, he didn't own him. Just told him to get out.
Yeah.
That's not owning.
But it's starting to get. I also don't want to sound like I got it all figured out. Like I for sure do not. Like I'm in the grind right now. I'm in the freaking meat grinder. So, but I'm loving it. Like I'm enjoying life, and it's also just like so much perspective, because it's already just insane to me. Because like I've got songs that just have just millions and millions of listens from like all over the world, and I get DMs from people all over the world, and like I knew no one in the industry and just had to grind to like cut a first record, didn't know what I was doing. I've finally been able to like sell some songs and stuff like that and like make a little bit of money, and but just have like no clue, no guidance, just support, but just didn't know what you were doing. And so if you can just step back, for me, I just got to step back and kind of look at the whole thing. Outside noise has a big effect on it too. You're just hanging out. People are like, man, did you see so-and-so? They're blowing up, and just not letting that stuff. It's like, yeah, dude, I'm happy for them. That's great. But they're like, well, what do you think? You should start. And it's like, dude, that's great that they're doing that. There's probably some takeaways I could have, but I'm doing my thing, and I'm like enjoying what I'm doing, and it's all, and just staying, kind of putting the blinders on to a certain degree. And that goes back to the process though. If I didn't love writing songs and just making the music, the happiest I am is when I come up with a new song and just a melody.
I know that feeling.
Find something cool in the studio. I love it. And even my family will get a little, not weird, but they're always kind of a little confused once a song comes out, like if it does well or whatever, or like I get a good show or something, and they're like, well, why aren't you more excited? You should be more excited. And I'm like, because I'm not committed to that.
Right.
I'm not committed to the outcome. And you can say it, but until somebody sees you put it like into like really sees it happening, then it kind of weirds people out a little bit, because the only way we can think of the happiness and joy is coming from the outcome. I'm like, well, you didn't see me high five my buddy when we came up with the melody and how excited we got when we heard that cool shaker thing. Like, that was when I was really enjoyed it. Because the outcome's fleeting. It can freaking change overnight. It can blow up overnight.
Well, my career, really, the focus has changed. Like, one of the things I love saying is that the more commas that you have after your name, the less common of a life that you led, right? So in the obituary, if it simply said William Lee Martin, comedian, period, then as much as people would go, well, that was a lot of fun for him to do with his career. That's why now the focus has just adding the commas: songwriter, producer, actor,
Renaissance man.
All these things that I want behind there. So everybody told me, first of all, I've been writing songs since I was 5 years old. So I probably have written 1,500 songs, but 10 are good, right? But I couldn't get anybody in Texas to write with me, even though so many of the Texas artists all had the attitude of, hey, you tell the jokes and we'll write the songs. Like the process of writing isn't writing.
Yeah.
And that's all comedy is writing. Actually all it is rewriting. And
you mean like editing?
Yeah. So you're always looking for the word that changes it to absolutely flips it.
Well,
right.
In my opinion, in the songwriting sessions I've been in, that's the part that gets swept under the rug, is editing. Like, people just don't spend the time. Like, is there not a word that's better than that word right there? How are we not?
Yeah, it's
what?
And it drives me crazy because a lot of times when you're writing a song, sometimes you just have to go, okay, it is finished. Otherwise, it becomes, you never are able to put it on display.
Sure.
And eventually the art has to go into the museum, and that way people can look at it and everything else. So you have to eventually get to that conclusion. But when you're writing a song, I don't know if you feel like I do, but my songs aren't anything that's funny. That's the funniest part of it. My whole life is about being stand-up, but most stand-ups aren't funny off stage like you would think, unless you're an impressionist, then you're not.
No, those are kind of weird.
Yeah, they are weird. Yeah, because then they're not really living their own life.
Yeah. So,
and class clowns normally don't become stand-up comedians because it's very studied. It is spending time observing other people and then commenting on that observation. But with the songwriting, I couldn't get any Texas artist to write with me. And then out on the ships, there was a guy that started writing with me, and we wrote a really great tune called 400 Horses. And I loved the idea that I finally saw this thing come together. And then I wrote with a guy here locally, Chris Rivers, and we wrote a song called I'll Stand For You, which is when they were kneeling during the national anthem. And it had nothing to do with anybody kneeling, is why I stand for the national anthem, right? And that got, I don't know, 8 million views or something on Facebook or something. And then I still couldn't get anybody, the local artists that I knew personally here in town to write with me. They still had the attitude. And then when the pandemic happened, I couldn't go out and tell jokes. And I really took it as God shaking up my little Etch-a-Sketch of what I thought the plan was. And like, what if you can't go tell jokes for the rest of your life? What else are you going to be? What else are you going to try? I gave you a whole lot of skills. I gave you a whole lot of talents on other things that you're not even touching, that you've been doing your whole passions that wake you up in the morning and have you. And then as soon as I started writing and writing some pretty decent stuff, then that's when you get all the naysayers. Why are you doing that? Nobody's ever gonna cut songs. They don't cut songs anymore.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah, nobody's ever going to cut songs now. They all want to be part of the writing process.
Why are you doing something different than I would do?
Right. So, but I write, honestly, as goofy as it sounds, or cliche, or Barry Manilow as it sounds, I write the songs that I want to feel passionate about.
Yeah.
I wrote a song that I think, if I can find the right artist, It's called God in a Bar. And it's about a guy speaking to God in a bar. A guy that came in with a Bible and he's out of place and he's got a cup of coffee and he could see right through you, like looking through a window. And then his whole life changes because he found God in a bar, and God's everywhere, kind of thing. But that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy and get passionate about. And then you'll still get somebody telling you that you shouldn't pursue that.
So has a society always been adverse to
absolutely change?
Change, but like multi-dimensional type people?
Not at all. When I was growing up, there were still the Bing Crosbys out there. There were, you list any comedian, and they were also a song and dance man. They were an actor. They were a comedian. It was only later in the 70s that stand-up became its own entity.
Okay.
And people like to compartmentalize anybody. So you cannot be this because that means I need to be something other than just who I am. And there are people that love a compartmentalized life. I can't live it. Like my brother has worked for Lockheed Martin for 40 years. That would drive me absolutely insane. It's absolutely how he feels safe. You know, he goes to work every day at 7:30 and gets out of work at 3:45 every day.
So do you think that's more common?
I think it used to be. I think now you have to have a hustle. You know, he's like an albatross. He's a unicorn. He's been at a job for 40 years. There's nobody. I hate to be the old man in the room. There's no kids keeping the same job now for more than 3 years. You know, the old joke, the old line that every HR would ask is, "What do you see yourself in 5 years?"
Different jobs.
And now the kids can go in 3 different jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see myself in 3 different spots.
Okay, so do you think in terms of the arts, people like to consume things in more compartmentalized
I think it's easier.
ways?
I think it's easier. But that's also one of the reasons why I dropped Cowboy Bill from the name.
Yeah.
People, every interview that I had with a nickname of Cowboy Bill, the first question was, "Are you a real cowboy?" And so we never got to any of the depth of exactly where my comedy has grown to. And I think it's grown quite a bit. And it's grown over the last 5 years. I'm actually doing stuff now in my stand-up that I am so proud to do because I feel like I'm saying some real stuff, you know, and really getting some not gimmicky laughs, but I'm getting some just honest human, which is, even professing my Christianity, I get blasted quite a bit.
Oh, bro, in your world, that's a weird thing to even. What's funny is nowadays that's way more bold than trashing it.
But it's actually it's from the other Christians that I get the most guff from. Judgy.
Oh, okay, because you don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lady, because I still talk about real life, and my life is not. I am not a choir boy, and I've never pretended to be. I tell people that the show is relatively clean, which only means that compared to my relatives, it's clean.
Yep.
You know, will I say cuss words in it? Not many, but yeah, it's part of the vernacular. I'm doing better than I ever did. You know,
boy, if that doesn't sum up the Christian life, right there, I'm doing better than I ever did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have 4 new shirts that are coming out because of the guff that I've taken by Christians. One says, "I know Jesus and you ain't him." I like that one. One says, "I've claimed to be a Christian. I've never claimed to be Christ."
Yeah, and you're not like justifying necessarily. Like the whole idea is that you do change when you become a Christian. You have a changed life, but that starting point is different for everybody.
Yeah, and also your ability to do always the right thing is not as easy for everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a work in progress.
Yeah, you're telling me. Yeah.
But if you think I'm going to be perfect at this, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well, in some people's perception of what's allowed and what's not.
yeah, and I've always thought it was weird that you would draw the line on language when the language that we're speaking wasn't spoke when they wrote the Bible. So how would they know if that word was worse than
That one
this
is
word?
pretty dicey. But it's like most sins. Like whenever Jesus talks about sin, a lot of times he talks about the intent, like of the heart, where
Yeah.
your heart's at. So, I mean, just like where he would call out all the hypocrites and, they would be doing all the right things and saying all the right things, but they were dead on the inside.
Well, this lady sent. She just kept every post we would put. She would say he's vulgar. Don't go see his show. And
She was going after you.
all the time. And
What's her name?
I don't have it. I would give it. I would absolutely give it if I had it. But my wife finally responded to it. God love her. And she said, my husband, he tries to bring laughter into the world, and it's how he makes a living. And you, as a Christian, keep saying this stuff. And the lady quoted a scripture in the Bible, and it talked about being obscene, right?
Yeah.
But in the same scripture, it also said slander. Don't do slander. In the same scripture. And it's like, well, you're not reading the whole thing.
Yeah.
You're pointing out him, but what you're doing is slander. The definition of slander is that.
Yeah. Also, we could bring up the one that if you have an issue with a fellow Christian, you're supposed to approach him in private.
Yeah. Well, that's why there's one that says, instead of judging me, pray that I don't slap you.
Is that I need to do more merch like that. Not jokes, but with just text.
Yeah, no, and y'all, and I mean, let's face it. If you're buying a T-shirt, fellas, either one of you, his face on a T-shirt or my face on a T-shirt, which one do you think's going to sell?
Yours all day.
Stick with your face.
All day is yours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dude, people want to punch me.
Yeah. I just want, at some point, you just want to gaze into his eyes, don't you?
I have a super punchable face.
Yeah.
People think that's ridiculous until Micah. I've known Micah since I was like 13 or something. And a lot of people I've
Is
known.
he a good kisser?
Dude, he's, it's borderline. I usually like when they come on to me, but I usually have to be the aggressor with him. So I'm not really into that, but he's just a tough cookie to crack, dude. A lot of people think I'm being ridiculous though when I try to tell them, like when I go out to bars, like how many like fights I have to not get into.
Yeah.
And it's been like that my whole life, and people think I'm like full of it until they see it happen, and they're like, "What on earth is happening right now?"
Why do you think that is? You think
She's got a punchable face. I think I put out I don't know what the vibe is yet. I know I put out a vibe. I love playing poker. I'm a big poker player, and poker will teach you. If you end up getting good, it's probably because you've started to develop some level of self-awareness. Because on top of just learning the game and knowing what you're supposed to do, learning how people perceive you, and then not getting offended by how they perceive you, all you do is just adapt to how they are perceiving you, and their perception could change in real time. So just trying to pick up on that.
I didn't
If that
catch
makes
any
sense.
of that. I just kept gazing into his eyes. His lovable, punchable eyes.
You are into black dudes, huh? I knew it. But I don't know, man. So in poker, I just can't bluff anybody. I had to figure that out the hard way, because they'll just sit there and be like, they'll just call me down with anything.
Are you one of these guys that watch poker on television?
I used to when I was younger. When I was younger.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I just loved it. Yeah,
Really?
I really liked it.
Doesn't it help that they show what the cards are on everybody?
Well, yeah, but you're getting to figure out like different angles and why they did it and stuff like that. You're kind of watching it for a different reason.
Is that really?
Yeah.
'Cause I just watch it. I'm like, why am I watching this?
There's no mystery.
It's like in football, if they would flash, okay, here's the play that's coming, this one and this one. Well, let's see how that works out.
Well, no, it is. It's a puzzle. It's a game. It's like chess. Yeah. It's bizarre. I totally understand why somebody wouldn't like it. Absolutely get it.
No, I've
But I'll clackety-clack at a craps table. I mean, high action. Let's do it. I'm into that too.
I'm terrible with any sort of gambling stuff at all. I really am. And I always had a policy when I worked at casinos that I wasn't going to give the money right back to the people that gave it back to me.
Probably a pretty good policy.
And they always want you to, you ever notice they want you to cash that check before you leave the casino?
Oh, funny.
They absolutely, they'll tell you, hey, you can take it right over there to the cage there and you can cash it.
I had always heard that they used to pay in cash.
Sometimes, yeah.
They still do? Or I guess you don't really do casinos anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, occasionally we still do it, but no, it's always now it's all legit. So they want to pay you and get a record of everything, but they definitely want you to go over that cage because they figure they can get it out, some of it out of you.
They probably do.
And they do.
They do out of me for sure.
Yeah. Do what?
I said they've been in business.
Yeah. If you ever notice, there's not one light that's not burning in a casino. There's not one light that's not burning.
No clocks, no windows.
No clocks, no. But I'm telling you, they're making money somehow because every light's burning on the inside of that joint.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they're making money. See, that's why poker, though. You're playing the man. You're not playing the casino, right?
Playing the man.
Playing the man.
You are a 60s kid. We're going to have you in a white van soon. Not with that hair. Not with that hair. You can't.
What decade is this hair?
No, that hair is too perfect. You can't have a white van and that thing.
Oh no!
And go buy candy. They won't have you. They'll have you a restriction order where you can't be near a.
See, the exact reason you're
school.
saying. I just can't help but stare into his eyes. Look at his hair. Is the same reason you walk into a bar and a guy's just like, I'm gonna hit him. I'm gonna hit him. So some people think, the good looking dude might have it easier, but watch out. Sometimes they're scrappy because they had to be.
Well, when's the last time you got in a bar fight?
In a bar fight?
Yeah.
It's been a while. In a bar fight. Well, I guess it would have been, I probably would have, we were outside of the bar.
Okay.
But it was a while ago. It was a long time ago. I've learned how to dissipate the energy a lot. And now they're getting kind of weird because like I just had one recently in Nashville where some guys approached me. I was just sitting there with my buddy and he works for me. He's an engineer. He's my drummer too. And he was one of them that I've always told him like, because we don't normally go out like after shows or anything. Like I don't really go to bars very much anymore.
Right.
And I've always told him like, dude, I'm telling you, if we go out somewhere, it's just one of those deals. Like somebody will just come up and start just talking trash. So we were sitting there watching a band and a couple dudes stumbled over and the first dude just walked up to me and he goes, "You're just going to stand over here and be the coolest fucking guy in the bar?" And I was just sitting there watching the band, holding my beer, and I looked at Wyatt and he goes, and I was like, "I'm just sitting here drinking a beer, dude." And then his buddy, leans over and does the little t-shirt thing and he puts his finger right there and I just stared at him. And then he was like, I got you. And I go, "Dude, y'all are funny, man." I was like, I bet a lot of people get bent out of shape by y'all, but y'all are funny. And they kind of look at me weird. And then the third buddy walks up and he's like, "Dude, are you Jarrod Morris?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." And they were from Texas. And then so the third buddy came over and he was actually a cop too. So then he was like, "Oh my gosh, I love your music." And then the other two were like, "Oh yeah, us too." So at least I have that now, but that used to just turn into probably a scrap.
We live in a society where everybody thinks everybody else has it easier than you have it.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And while we all have it easier than most of the entire world.
Well, and as a Christian, and I'm sure we got to wrap this up soon. It looked like they were just switching the disc.
Oh,
So,
yeah. We're going to wrap it up.
When we fill up a disc.
We did it.
Yeah. It's not even tape.
Was that wasn't, anyways, I thought we were going back to the homosexual thing. I didn't.
No, a disc.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. That's all important there.
So I just lost all my train of thought.
Just filling up that disc, Daddy.
But yeah, but when you think about what everybody in this world is going through, and you run into Christians and they're like, "Oh, these are the signs that it's the end of time." One person's going to be finally right on their guess, right?
Yeah.
But I hate to be the bearer of good news, but there are more people putting more effort in feeding the unfed than there ever has been in the history of the world. There's more going towards trying to keep people out of slavery in poverty than there ever has been in the history of the world. While we do have conflicts in the Middle East and we have other things, it's actually one of the most less wartime than it ever has been in the history of the world. When I hear people say this is all
It's terrible. It's
signs,
the worst it's ever been.
Yeah, the signs that it's the end of times, even with the presidential election coming up. Don't you think that when 6.2 million Jews were being killed, and that somebody might raise their and go,
This feels pretty.
This is close to the end of time.
No kidding.
During the Black Plague, when they were literally throwing bodies out into the street because there was nowhere to keep them anymore. Don't you think those folks were thinking this is the end of time? So my thing to people is it's probably there's such a vast less of a chance that it is the end of the world. Why don't you worry a little bit more about what the world that you're living in, and as Christians, trying to make that world vastly better than always being your focus on what comes after this world. And that's my biggest complaint, if I have one, with where Christianity is in America, is that the focus is always on the afterlife and not nearly as much on just trying to help your neighbor, put a smile on somebody's face, to lend a hand, to ask the old lady next to you, can I mow your grass for you? You know, knock on somebody's door and say, here's a cup of coffee, even though I don't drink coffee.
Amen.
You know what I mean? So
praise the Lord.
That's
there we go.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's my callback right there. That's my comedy callback. I got this thing licked.
Oh yeah, you're there now. That's all I need is a pretty boy telling jokes now.
Oh no!
Now I'm gonna punch you in the face.
Yeah, it's okay. I felt it already. You know, metaphorically.
Well, this has been great.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing it. You're the man. It's so wild that I finally actually got to meet you.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
I'm gonna make you listen to God in a Bar before I leave here.
Yeah, we're going to demo jail.
Yeah,
demo jail. That's what we call it.
We're. I already told him to lock the door.
What's the equivalent of demo jail in comedy? Do people sit you down and do a bit in front of you?
Oh, yeah. No, you don't get it as much with comedians, you know, because they. But sometimes when they do it, like Foxworthy did it to me the first time I met him. And I know we were trying to wrap it up, but it's a cool story. First time I met him, it's in Branson. We're working together. He flies in. He's non-pretentious at all. As soon as he comes up, shakes my hand, firm handshake, you know. So some of those guys, you know, you do that limp wrist kind of.
That's how I do it.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Really soft. And but he goes, hey, Bill, I want you to see this thing in the dressing room. There are all kinds of people. We're walking down the hall, and he goes, every time I come to here, all I want is a 3-piece from Kentucky Fried Chicken and some coleslaw and some mashed potatoes. And we come around the corner, and Jarrod, they've got 60 pieces of chicken. It's on him. They got a vat of coleslaw and a bigger vat of and he literally scoops what he wants and looks at the lady and said, 3 pieces. And then we're there, and all these people are standing around, and he goes, hey, Bill, I want to ask you about a bit. And he does it in front of me. It's about his daughters and his wife and all their dogs are female, and they're all cycling together. And he finishes the bit, and everybody laughs. And he goes, what do you think? And I said, I mean, it's funny, but can Jeff Foxworthy get away with a cycling bit right now? And he's like, that's what I thought too. And everybody else looked at me like I was a dickhead.
Oh, because you weren't the yes man there.
I was not the yes man. What he wanted at that point was a real comic's opinion about a bit. And I found the longer that I stay in the business, that's what we get. We don't get that kind of jail. I know you guys do, because they're like, everybody thinks they can write a song.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just one little title.
Yeah.
And they're not ever that good. I'm actually open to it. If you
God in a Bar is pretty good.
God in a Bar is pretty, and I get it because you're already unpacking it.
Yeah.
You already kind of unpacked it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was cringing on the inside the whole time you were telling it.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay.
Maybe that's why people want to punch me. Maybe those statements right there.
Yeah.
You
no,
think? Yeah.
no, it's weird when alcohol gets involved, but are we wrapping this up? I think we are, because he's going on a pee break again.
This one cut off, but you're still.
Oh, it's still on.
Yeah.
Just
Did
on
you
this
get
one.
the Foxworthy one?
Yeah.
Well, thank God my face can't be in this anymore.
So yeah, it's been a pleasure. My wife's not going to want to watch it if you're not in the film anymore, so let's just cut out of this thing.
Oh my God.
Like, hell, I can see him all the time.
Well, oh man, I wish I had the balls to end something like that. Just look at a guest and just be like, well,
Thank you.
see ya.